Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. The World Bank says we're still a lower middle income country, even after a record jump in national income. But Finance Chief Ralph Recto says not for long. He's betting we'll hit upper middle income status by next year. Trump's tariffs take effect next week. We ask Jonas Ravelas what it means for exports, investors, and the peso. And later, GoTyme CEO Abet Tinio joins us to discuss what it'll take for the Philippines to go possibly fully cashless. Let's take a look at how global markets moved overnight, with tech stocks rallying and trade tensions still in focus. Wall Street closed mostly higher, lifted by tech gains and signs of diplomatic movement. The U.S. and Vietnam just sealed a trade deal, slapping 20% tariffs on each other's exports. It's a strategic move to avoid full-blown escalation and may signal a shift in Trump's trade playbook.
If the administration does not extend the July 9th deadline and we don't have a slew of trade agreements between now and then, I think the market will become very nervous very quickly. If the administration, as I believe they might, does extend the deadline, it will be a sigh of relief, but I don't necessarily believe it will be a sharp rally because we still have to wait for these trade agreements to be codified.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average was flat with a slight downward bias. The S&P 500 higher by 0.5%, and the Nasdaq higher by almost 1%. In Europe, a similar split. The FTSE 100 dipped 0.1%. Germany's DAX gained 0.5%, while France's CAC 40 surged nearly 1%. Close but not enough. The Philippines misses upper middle income status by just $26, according to the World Bank's new income rankings. GNI per capita hit a record $4,470 in 2024, but to level up, we needed to clear $4,496. That means we remain a lower middle income economy for another year. Vietnam, meanwhile, just edged ahead with $4,490, but still didn't make the cut either. GNI, or gross national income, tracks what Filipinos earn here and abroad. And while we're gaining ground, it's not yet enough to shift our global standing. This matters because income classifications impact everything from credit ratings to aid eligibility to investor confidence. So we didn't make it this year, but the climb isn't over. Finance Secretary Ralph Recto says the Philippines could still hit upper middle income status by the end of 2025 or just after. Recto points to strong fundamentals and heftier government spending with an expansionary fiscal strategy meant to boost growth, create jobs, and lift more Filipinos out of poverty. To cross that threshold, the Philippines needs a GNI per capita of at least $4,496 or $4,496. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. clears house at the Bureau of Customs, axing 5 officials as he installs new Customs Chief Arnel Nepomuceno. Retired Police General Nolasco Calalo takes over enforcement, replacing Attorney Teddy Sandy Raval. Ex-DTI Undersecretary Agaton Teodoro Unvero steps in for Attorney Vener Bakiran as Deputy Commissioner for Assessment and Operations. Port of Cagayan de Oro's Alexandra Lumotad is promoted to NAIA, replacing Attorney Yasmin Mapa. Only Michael Fermin and Clarence Dizon keep their posts. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro says the shakeup is designed to clean house and ensure customs is run by honest, anti-smuggling professionals committed to transparency. Now, Japan is digging in to defend its national interests. Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba says he won't stand down as President Trump threatens to slap tariffs on up to 35% of Japanese imports. That's a sharp escalation from the 24% rate Trump announced in April, now paused until July 9. Ishiba says Japan isn't just any trade partner, it's America's largest investor and a major U.S. job creator, and that he argues should warrant different treatment.
米の If car exports to U.S. are set to drop, we will boost domestic demand and expand export markets so that we can protect the Japanese industry while also contributing to job creation in the U.S. We will pursue both paths.
And as tensions escalate between the U.S. and its allies, capital is moving and markets are feeling the shift. We're kicking off the second half of 2025 with two big questions. What's next for Philippine capital markets, and how are global capital flows being rewritten in real time? From weak index returns to a pullback from U.S. assets, the themes that define the first half are setting up a high-stakes second half. Joining us now to break it all down is Jonas Ravelas, Senior Advisor at Reyes, Takandong and Company. Hi, Jonas.
Hi, good morning, Maiki.
Good morning
to your list.
So much to talk about. We're going to be leveraging off of your 30-plus years of experience in this industry. Okay, so challenged by the global environment, we just closed the first half with the PSE index down 1.61% year to date. What does that tell you about where we are now and where we're headed?
Well, basically, I guess there's the first half highlighted a wait and see. And again, as we draw closer to July 9, which is the end of the tariff pause, most likely the market will see what the impact will be. And probably from then on, we could probably see some weather risk on trades that will come, especially now that geopolitical tensions have subsided. Oil prices are down in the Philippines. Inflation has also come down. So this could spark a potential risk on if we get to see more signs that growth is coming back.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do we stack up against our peers in the ASEAN? We're not the only ones taking that wait-and-see stance.
Okay, I think what we need to look at is the Philippines as a unique perspective. In terms of government revenues, meaning tax collections, we are at par with our peers. However, in terms of expenses, we have one of the higher deficits, mainly because we're playing a catch-up game, and we're the only country in the ASEAN that is actually spending on ramp-up infrastructure. So that is actually a good story that could shield the Philippines from any potential slowdown from a global perspective. Now that even inflation is is already manageable, and this should already gain traction, particularly in the second half of the year.
Yeah, talking about global policy shocks, Jonas, Trump's big, beautiful bill is about bringing jobs and factories back to the United States. How do you see this affecting our own industry, semiconductors, BPO, electronics?
Well, basically, in the recent update of the government's DBCC, they've actually lowered our export target from 5% to negative 2%. So this already is a clear signal that, the 17%, though we're not really as export-oriented, is actually going to hit us. And again, we're still awaiting what the trade talks between the U.S. and the Philippines. So at worst, we're at the 17%.
Okay, that's right. Trump's new tariff deadline, July 9. How exposed are our exporters and the peso? Let's talk about that also, because, weakness in the peso will help offset that 17% tariff.
Well, basically, I guess for the Philippines in general, we're really not as affected, but we're affected through the secondary inflationary effects plus the currency volatility, as other countries will try, particularly those who are export-oriented, to probably try to sell their products much cheaper. So the question is competitiveness. So definitely there'll be some currency adjustments along the way, secondary effects on inflation. So definitely this is something what investors will try to look at, especially in the second half of the year, whether we're still able to maintain inflation below 2%, or if it will climb above 2%, will it stay below the 3%? So these are things that could further enhance growth if the BSP were to cut by 4 times. So we're expecting one before end of by September or August. So another 25, which will bring it to 5%. And if inflation is by then definitely we could probably see another cut towards 475 by the fourth quarter.
So more rate cuts this second half. Taking a look at the PSE index again, Jonas, we saw strong gainers in the first half. They were the LT Group up 22%, Pure Gold up 17%, Converge as well up 17%, Bloomberry up 11%, URC up 13%. What are the themes driving this, and how sustainable is this trajectory, that trajectory in the second half?
Well, with the second, what we've seen so far is that with inflation being manageable, we're starting to see recovery in consumer counters like what you mentioned earlier. And of course, one of the things that really took off is really more on the gaming side, especially when things aren't as rosy. We get to see some, the rise of liquor sales and gambling is high.
All right. As we talked about the gainers, let's talk about the flip side of that. Also, the laggards in the first half. That was ASEN down 36%, Globe down 22%, Jollibee down 16%, Monde down 15%, and PLDT down 6%. Are these names oversold, or is this a structural reset in how the market values telcos, renewables, and some consumer plays?
Well, in the early part of the year, I think most of the investors have taken the ability to do a sell on rally. So every time the market moved towards 6,500, investors actually took the opportunity to lighten up positions so that they're agile enough to probably take in, or rotate their portfolio into counters that would probably benefit in the second half of the year. And we've already seen early winners, infrastructure, and eventually consumer.
Onto a specific stock rather. There's talk about the shares of DigiPlus. DigiPlus, their shares are down 27% in just the last 2 weeks. There is a buzz that the president may announce a crackdown on online gaming in the sauna. How much of the sell-off on DigiPlus was because of fundamentals, and how much of it was because of political risk and staying away from political risk?
Well, basically, I guess, the rally of the stock was quite fast. So, of course, and especially when, in a country where, a lot of people are challenged by the present situation in inflation, a lot of people are also wondering, given the seamless transfer of people of money to gaming, this is something that became a bit alarming. And even Nielsen reports talks about this shift to e-gaming or e-gambling.
Okay. All right. Zooming out, let's talk about the global shifts in money, Jonas. Why ultra-wealthy Asians are pulling back from the United States. A Nikkei Asia report says that ultra-wealthy investors across Asia are quietly pulling back from U.S. stocks, citing Trump's tariffs, Fed attacks, and recession fears. Is this a turning point for global capital flows?
Well, basically, I guess a lot of the investors are worried about what would be the impact of Trump's tariffs. And what we've seen so far, despite, since the start of the year, the U.S. markets are close to their February 19 highs. And one can think that whether this could be, a high valuation issue, and all of the potential impact of the tariffs will come in the second half. So there's a question whether we'll probably see a top in the U.S. market in the coming months. So basically, people are worried where will they probably shift their funds. So there could be some profit taking in the second half of the year. And others are still, expecting that the Fed will cut by at least 50 basis points. So this is where probably we could be, shall I say, topping out, meaning there are the higher probability of a sell-off in the U.S. and probably a shift to other markets. And one can only think that, emerging markets like the Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia would probably be the next potential targets.
Now, in this as this happens, are you starting to see Filipino investors, high net worth individuals, and institutions rethinking their own U.S. exposure?
Yes, I think they do. But you need to be able to be agile enough to lighten up some position and still stay defensive amid all of this uncertainty. So, of course, people will always want the developed markets because of the certainty of the potential gains as compared to emerging markets.
Private banks in Singapore, Japan, and India, they say they're moving their clients into gold, yen, and multi-asset strategies. If you're advising a Filipino family office today, given everything that's going on, what would you advise them to do?
Well, basically, it's really all about a diversification in one ASEAN exposure, Philippine consumer and infra plays, and of course, a certain extent to this gold and multi-asset funds. So basically, to be able to have this diversified portfolio to ensure that, given all of this volatility, your portfolio remains well diverse enough to eventually withstand any volatility.
All right. Thank you so much, Jonas Ravelas, Senior Advisor at Reyes Tacandong, for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you.
Now, we're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Let's check on Asian markets this Thursday morning. Right now, the Nikkei 225 is higher by 0.1%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index higher by 0.6%. The Shanghai Composite lower by 0.1%. And Singapore's Straits Times Index higher by 0.5%. Now, here at home, the Philippine Index held the line Wednesday, but just barely as investors turned cautious ahead of Friday's inflation print and the July 9 U.S. tariff deadline. The PSE Index slipped 0.1% to close at 64.19. Traders are on edge as President Trump's tariff clock ticks, with no extension in sight and a 10% base rate still looming. Now, Fed Chair Jay Powell, meanwhile, says trade uncertainty is limiting the U.S. central bank's ability to cut rates. Markets are still pricing in 64 basis points of easing this year, but just a 1 in 5 chance of a move this month. Value turnover yesterday climbed to 7.77 billion pesos, but net foreign buying fell sharply to 258 million pesos from nearly a billion the day before. All eyes now are on Friday's inflation report as investors look for clues on the BSP's next move and whether Philippine markets can stay resilient amid all the global volatility. Now, taking a look at our PSE index this morning, as of 10:25, the main gauge is in the green, and I'm seeing a lot of green. Everything is in the green this morning. The main gauge is higher by 0.9% to 64.75. The broader all shares index higher as well, up by 0.7%. The financials, industrial holding firms, property services, and mining and oil counters are all trading in positive territory, some very sharply so early in the morning. Volume is at 160 million shares, valued at almost 2 billion pesos. Market breadth is decidedly positive, with 87 advancers, 44 decliners, and 48 stocks unchanged. Taking a look at the currency market, the peso opened stronger at 56.33 to the greenback, firmer from yesterday's close of 56.37. Now, a new bill promises to shake up the Philippines' telecom sector, but it's facing fierce pushback from the country's biggest telcos. The Conectadong Pinoy bill aims to expand free public internet, but industry giants warn it could compromise security and create an uneven playing field. Will the president sign it or shut it down? Sujin Kim reports.
The last this appeal to the president to veto the proposed bill because what we perceive as faulty provisions that could compromise national security.
In the government's drive to expand telecommunications services across the country, the Conectadong Pinoy bill promises to open the doors to new telco players. Unlike existing companies that required a congressional franchise, new providers, even those offering voice, data, or satellite services, would only need to register with the National Telecommunications Commission and follow existing DICT regulations. According to supporters, the bill will make internet faster, cheaper, and more widely available. especially in over 19,000 still offline barangays. More competition, they argue, means lower prices for consumers, but the country's major telcos, PLDT Smart and Globe, who also make up the Philippine Chamber of Telecommunications Operators or PCTO, disagree.
It's a cute name, but it's fraught with dangers. And there's only registration. People can game the system. You only require registration, unvetted.
Napakadaling sabihin na more players will drive down the cost Hindi mo pwedeng just come up with a sweeping statement that's gonna lower costs. I'm fearful really of what's bound to happen.
The biggest flashpoint, a 2-year grace period for new operators to comply with cybersecurity standards.
That's very dangerous. Malign actors can embed malware and other malicious software into the system that can pollute the entire telecommunications industry.
Medyo chapsuy na Kung ano yung pwede nila karga, kinarga na nila talaga lahat.
The PCTO also objects to the open, unregulated use of spectrum and what they describe as free riding.
Not simply free ride on existing telecommunications. Build din sila ng infrastructure in order for us to share. Reciprocally. Hindi yung mag-free ride ka na lang.
Another concern, lack of frequency coordination, especially for private satellite operators.
Another would be the provision on the unfettered, unbridled use of frequencies with respect to satellite system operators. Because this will cause serious interference.
The telcos say they were never consulted.
Ang pag-veto po ng bill, hindi po pwedeng kasi line by line. Kinakailangan kung sakasakali, ang Pangulo ay i-veto po niya entirely yung bill. Para po naman, makasama po naman kami. Kasi ang tampo po namin, hindi naman po kami nakasama Nung ginagawa itong bill na to, talagang hindi kami nakonsulta. Kami naman po yung pinakatatamaan.
PLDT Smart and Globe emphasize they're not against competition, but it must be fair, balanced, and secure. Their call, send the bill back to Congress for a more deliberate, more inclusive review. Sujin Kim, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
The Philippines is now officially a digital payments nation. Latest data from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas shows digital payments now account for over 53% of all retail transactions, a huge leap from just 1% a decade ago. And as QR codes and e-wallets and real-time transfers go mainstream, digital banks like GoTyme, now with over 6.5 million users, are driving the shift from the fringes to the financial core. So how close are we to a fully cashless economy, and what will it take to get the rest of the country on board? Joining us now to talk more about this is GoTyme's Co-CEO Abet Tinio. Hi Abet, thank you for being here with us.
Hello Maiki, happy to be here.
Okay, going back to the figures we just mentioned, the BSP says we've crossed the 53% threshold for majority urban digital retail payments. That's a huge leap from 1% just a decade ago. What's driving this momentum?
Certainly very good numbers, no? Driving the momentum, actually it started a little bit with the realization from Filipinos during the pandemic that, hey, we can go digital. We don't have to go physical. Then there's also a realization that, hey, I can bring transactions from what we used to call offline to online and then back to offline. But that said, personally, I don't believe there will be a truly, totally cashless state. I think we're in a transition phase right now where we're going from full cash to less cash or cash light before possibly cashless.
Interesting. No one is really 100% cashless anyway. Sweden is the global front runner here, but they're just at 90%. Now that change, going back to the Philippines, that change that we're seeing on the ground in how Filipinos handle money, going digital, is that, are those pandemic era habits that stuck, or is this a major structural shift?
Certainly you have pandemic habits that stuck, but you also see people backsliding, if you want to call it that, reverting to some of their cash habits, not necessarily bad. Leading this habit of going digital are actually the younger generation, right? Higher propensity to go digital, very digitally literate, financially literate as well.
Yeah, they've been more exposed to this.
Absolutely.
I mean, our generation, the older generations, cash was a tradition, but it's a dying tradition. Abet, compared to our neighbors in Southeast Asia, how far along are we in going digital? Are we catching up? Are we still lagging behind? Where do we stand?
Well, you'll be surprised to hear that Philippines is actually among the top in Southeast Asia. If we focus in on, let's say, point of sale transactions or POS in the lingo, Philippines actually ranks number 2 after Indonesia.
Yeah.
And then we're in the top 3 when it comes to the use of buy now, pay later or credit next to Singapore and Malaysia. So we are keeping pace with our neighbors. Kudos actually to the e-wallets for making it easier for Filipinos to open accounts, and the regulators for standardizing the use of QRPH as a means to deploy and accept payments.
Well, one of the biggest promises of digital banking is financial inclusion. How do we make that real, especially in the remote, far-flung areas of the country?
Perfect question. Financial inclusion, in my view, having an account or access does not equal usage. So while Filipinos are quickly opening up accounts and institutions are making it easy to open accounts, to fully embrace financial inclusion and to fully be included, it means the account has to be used. The means by which to use the account must be simplified, must be tailor-fit or made bespoke to behavioral cues. No? You don't make it difficult for a merchant to get a loan. You don't make it difficult for a consumer to pay digitally.
In this space, do you think the BSP is progressive enough? And how does it rank compared to our Southeast Asian regulators?
Oh, certainly. Personally, I feel the BSP, our BSP is progressive compared to its Southeast Asian regulators. No, where I think the total government needs to step in is, even if the BSP is progressive, there are other parts of government that may be lagging behind. So let's take the case of, let's say, a sari-sari store owner or a small scale industry. BSP will provide regulation, policy that makes it easier for them to open accounts. But then will the LGU provide incentives for sari-sari store owners to open more
so
more
you're saying
sari-sari
we need
stores,
a good
etc.
symphony of coordination across the broader government structure.
Perfect use of the word symphony there.
Okay, for CEOs and CFOs watching, what's the strongest business case for ditching cash beyond speed? What's the real value?
Speed is absolutely on the top there, no? But if you ditch cash, benefits like security or electronic recording that can keep very good records, very detailed records, right? There's also convenience, which also, of course, leads to speed. From both a business perspective and a consumer perspective, a good marriage of convenience and let's say necessary friction to make it safe and secure. I think that's what will push. More of these businesses to expand if it becomes easy for them.
Yeah. From your lens at GoTyme, how do you see the B2B side of digital payments evolving? From supplier chains to payroll to even credit, what opportunities are you guys chasing in this industry?
Okay, certainly one of the things that we're really into with GoTyme right now is actually payroll. In the Philippines, we don't have a single law that says your payroll account is portable, right? A lot of our employees move from employer to employer, where the employer actually mandates the payroll account. An employee who gets to choose his payroll account can build a history of credit, a history of transactions, that can lead to the inclusion that you're talking about, and making employers, both employers and employees, realize this, and choosing an account that will offer the benefits across his entire career. I think that's going to be a game changer. You don't have to look far. Just take a look at our Southeast Asian neighbors.
Yeah, speaking of more game changers, in terms of policy, what does the fintech sector need most from the government right now? Is it, apart from the interoperability and the symphony that you were talking about earlier, what about the infrastructure, faster approvals? What do you really need to really grow this industry?
Okay. 52% or 53%, you said, are into digital payments. There's still a gap of 48%, hard to open accounts. Where we've made strides actually now is in national ID. If you look at our sister company in South Africa, the Time Bank, very quick to open because of that national ID. I think while the national ID has expanded in multiple forms, we still need to get citizens, businesses, local regulators, local government units to accept and understand this ID. That could be your single source of truth across institutions, across industries, to say that, hey, Abet Tinio is Abet Tinio, Maiki is Maiki.
All right. On another front, talking about security and scale, you've got 6.7 million users as of today. As volumes grow, so does risk. What are you guys doing to mitigate the risks?
GoTyme would not have gotten its digital banking license if we didn't meet at least the minimums required by the BSP. Now, that said, do we stop there? We stay ahead of the trend. You take a look at what's current in the industry. We're very much into the use of AI and leveraging AI as a tool to help us complement the capabilities of our employees, complement the capabilities of our cybersec team.
You launched this in October of 2022. It's a fast-growing digital bank, 6.7 million users today. Your growth target, what's your growth target for the full year of 2025?
We're on track to hit a little over 9 million by the end of the year.
Okay, what does that say about where we are now and where we're headed in the second half?
That's saying that there's really a lot of demand. Filipinos are looking for differentiators. Filipinos are very much interested. While it's starting with the urban areas, it is actually moving to the rural areas. We cannot let up. We have to keep pace with technology and learn from the lessons that our neighbors actually have.
What's the next big frontier in digital banking? Is it embedded finance, cross-border payments, AI-assisted savings? What's next? What's big? What's next?
Everything you said. Definitely cross-border, definitely AI getting into this, but not just AI for the use of AI, right? Principled AI, if I may.
Yeah, principled AI. I like that. All right, thank you so much, Abet Tinio, the co-CEO of GoTyme Philippines.
Thank you, Maiki.
We're taking a short break. Business 360 will be right back. Thank you, Albert. Lines are being drawn at the Senate as senators rally behind their choices for the next president of the upper chamber. Hannah T. reports.
I am not satisfied with the leadership of the Senate, so I'm open to supporting other candidates for Senate presidency.
This is a strong review on Senate President Cheese Escudero's leadership as former SP Mig Zubiri looks for a more inclusive, consensus-building approach. During his time as the Senate chief, Zubiri says he led by consensus. There were weekly caucuses and fights on the floor were avoided. One of the last plenary clashes that happened during VP Sara's impeachment debate was when Senators Robin Padilla and Joel Villanueva nearly came to blows. Zubiri believes the Senate deserves a calmer, more dignified space.
Hindi ko gusto na ang leader sa Senate would be a dictatorial type.
Escudero was earlier revealed to have garnered support from 13-plus senators, according to Senator Joel Villanueva. But for Zubiri, fellow lawmakers must decide based on the Senate's integrity. He was replaced by Escudero last year. He now aligns with what he calls a veteran bloc, including Senators Loren Legarda, Ping Lacson, and former SP Tito Soto. Zubiri is currently vying for Soto to return as Senate President, who, even during the pandemic, was physically present in the Senate while others worked remotely. Zubiri calls it leading by example. For Zubiri, the next SP must protect the chamber's independence, especially as it remains the last bastion of democracy.
Not just being independent from the House. Kasi may nagsasabi, gusto namin itong kandidato kasi inaaway niya si Speaker Martin. That's not the role of the Senate President. The role of the Senate President is to steer the Senate as a ship. You know, no matter how rough the waters are.
Zubiri also hints at key issues that tested the Senate's strength during his term, including the failed People's Initiative to amend the Constitution. He adds, the role of the Senate President is to remain steady, no matter the challenges or political storms. Escudero has yet to respond, but he earlier said he's open to whatever the outcome of the Senate leadership selection in the 20th Congress. Hannah Tia, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
From internet access to artificial intelligence, lawmakers are moving to future-proof the country's digital infrastructure. In a bid to protect Filipinos in the age of AI, Senator Pia Cayetano has filed a landmark bill to regulate artificial intelligence and promote ethical innovation. Cayetano says AI holds game-changing potential for agriculture, healthcare, and public services, but warns that without rules, it risks amplifying bias and discrimination. Her proposed law calls for transparency, human oversight, and penalties for misuse, including fines and jail time for unregistered AI systems or criminal abuse. Offenders could face up to 12 years in prison. The goal, to balance innovation with accountability before it's too late. Senators are moving to raise take-home pay and throw a lifeline to small business owners. Senator Sherwin Gatchalian wants to increase the income tax exemption to 400,000 pesos a year, up from 250,000 pesos, and raise the tax-free bonus ceiling to 150,000 pesos. Senate President Francis Escudero is backing a tax holiday for micro, small, and medium enterprises, along with new deductions for hiring workers and a lower gross tax rate of just 5%. The Philippines locks in nearly 72 billion pesos in new economic zone investments, a 59% surge in the first half of 2025 despite a dip in June. PEZA Chief Tereso Panga says the message is clear. Locators aren't backing down. From fresh investments to expansions, confidence in our eco zones is holding strong. The first 6 months saw 133 projects approved, nearly 33,000 jobs, and $1.26 billion in export value on deck. South Korea tops the investor list, followed by the United States, China, the Netherlands, and Japan. With a full-year target of 235 billion pesos, PEZA says it's firing on all cylinders and gunning for more gains in the second half. On another front, a former security aide turned whistleblower is now pointing fingers at powerful names in the case of the missing cockfight enthusiasts, including gaming tycoon Atong Ang. Julie Dondon Patidongan, also known as alias Totoy, tells Bilyonaryo News Channel that Ang, his former boss, helped hide him and 5 other security guards after their 2023 arrest, but later planned to turn them in and have them killed to silence the case. Patidongan says he's now speaking out after receiving fresh death threats, including against his family. He also names a general and a police colonel as part of the alleged conspiracy, but clarifies that actress Gretchen Barreto, while an Alpha member, is not among the masterminds. The whistleblower is calling on President Marcos for protection, saying that he trusts Justice Secretary Boying Remulla and PNP Chief Nicolas Torre to pursue the case fairly.
Hindi niya kayang bayaran ang Panginoon na nakatingin na siya talaga ang mastermind. Yan lang masasabi ko. Isa pa, nanawagan ulit ako kay Pangulong Marcos. Sana naman wag niya akong pabayaan. Ako ang susi lahat ng krimen na ginagawa ni Mr. Atong Ang. Alam ko lahat yan.
Meanwhile, Atong Ang appeared in person at the Mandaluyong prosecutor's office earlier today to file a complaint affidavit against Patidongan and another individual identified as Elias Brown. Elsewhere in the world, the U.S. House of Representatives begins debate on President Donald Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill, a massive tax and spending package that just cleared the Senate. Trump is meeting with Republican holdouts to rally support. But Democrats are drawing a line, calling the measure a windfall for the wealthy at the expense of core social services. The showdown comes ahead of the July 9 tariff deadline, adding even more uncertainty to global markets.
No American should go without food. This is a human rights issue. We live in the richest country on earth, for God's sake, and not a single kid in this country should go to bed hungry. Not a single one. And especially not when Republicans are giving millionaires and billionaires a big fat tax break. So I say to my Republican colleagues, what's wrong with you people?
Trump's Big Beautiful Bill isn't just stirring debate in Washington. It could hit the demand for Philippine green metals that feed into the U.S.'s EV supply chain. The Department of Trade and Industry's Export Marketing Bureau warns that proposed changes to U.S. clean vehicle incentives may reduce market access for Filipino exporters. This follows the bill's narrow passage in the Senate, with Vice President J.D. Vance casting the tie-breaking vote. The bill scraps tax credits for new EVs, tightens incentive eligibility, and slaps a 3.5% remittance tax on non-U.S. citizens, a move that could also hit OFWs. The DTI is urging local industries to assess their exposure and start mapping out contingency plans. Now, wildfires are forcing evacuations in Greece, threatening homes, tourism, and local economies at the peak of summer travel season. A blaze broke out Wednesday in a seaside village in the Halkidiki Peninsula, prompting firefighters to rush in as tourists and residents flee to safety. A separate forest fire is raging in Crete, a major destination for European travelers. Gale force winds are complicating efforts to contain the flames. Several homes have been damaged, but no casualties have so far been reported. Fires come amid an early summer heat wave sweeping Europe, raising fresh risks for the region's travel industry, agriculture, and insurers already under pressure from climate-driven disasters. Now, Qatar's latest push for peace in Gaza may be the region's best chance yet to end the violence, at least for now. The new proposal, backed by Qatar and Egypt, calls for a 60-day ceasefire and a phased release of hostages. Hamas would free 8 hostages on day 1 and more in the weeks that follow. The bodies of 18 others would also be returned in stages. U.S. President Donald Trump says Israel has agreed to the basic terms and called on Hamas to do the same. Negotiations won't be easy, but officials say this could lay the groundwork for a longer-term deal. The stakes are high. A ceasefire could stabilize the region and cool volatile energy markets already on edge from supply disruptions. But for now, it's a wait-and-see moment. But a region exhausted by conflict, even a 60-day pause can offer a glimpse of hope for them. And that's it for Business 360. I'm Maiki Oreta. Thank you for joining us, and keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo news channel.